All right, then I guess we can get started. Well, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're watching from. Welcome to this quick LemonadeLXP webinar on the 8 ways technology walkthroughs drive fintech adoption. My name is Carly Reynolds, and I'm on the marketing team here at LemonadeLXP. And I just have a couple of admin notes before we officially dive in and as people slowly join us. So there are a few ways for you to engage with us during this webinar. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a control panel, and you can use this to access the chat feature. If you are going to send a message in the chat, be sure to, when sending, in the drop-down menu, select to everyone so that we can all have a conversation together. I'm going to be hanging out in the chat for most of this webinar, so feel free to jump in there now, say hello, and tell us where you're watching from. Another way to engage with us is through the Q&A, which you can also access through that same control panel. You can use this to submit questions directly to us and also view and upvote questions that other people have submitted. At the end of the webinar, we will do a Q&A segment, and I will do my very best to bring forward as many questions from both the chat and the Q&A for John to answer. So if we do not get to your question live, don't worry. If that is the case, we will send you an email response within about 24 hours. During this webinar, we will also be launching some polls, and we would really appreciate it if you voted in them. It just gives us a sense of who's here and allows us to kind of tailor the webinar on the fly to the people who are in attendance. At the end of the webinar, when you leave, you should get a pop-up post-webinar survey. And again, we would really appreciate it if you took the time to fill it out. It's very, very short, and it just helps us know how we did today and helps us improve our webinars going forward. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, so if you've arrived a little bit late or maybe you're multitasking, I know I'm guilty of that sometimes, we will send out a recording of the full event within 24 hours by email. So keep an eye on your inboxes. Okay, I think those are all of my admin notes. So I think I am safe to turn things over to the speaker, LemonadeLXP's CEO and founder, John Finley. Take it away, John.
Thanks, Carly. And thanks to everybody for joining. I appreciate it. So as Carly mentioned, I'm the CEO of LemonadeLXP. So we are a digital adoption and learning experience platform that's designed to help FIs and fintechs drive digital adoption, fluency, and transformation. The digital adoption platform that we built it specifically in mind that customers would access it via the FI website so that they could self-help to understand how to use the tech. But since we brought it to market, our amazing clients have MacGyvered it in a whole bunch of different ways to use it for different use cases. So we thought it would be neat just to share all the different ways that they're using technology walkthroughs. In case you guys have walkthroughs or have other ways that you're supporting digital banking, this is sort of gives you an idea of what other FIs are doing to help support. So that's what the idea here is today. So to get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges that our customers are facing as they try to drive adoption and help customers migrate to digital banking. The first one is that— I
think you turned off your camera.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry about that. Yeah, sometimes I have to be reined in. Okay, so the first thing is that new tech is intimidating for both staff and for customers. You know, people have an aversion to trying new tech. Sometimes it's just apathy, but other times it's people are afraid of making mistakes. And in particular, with financial technology, mistakes, the perception is they can be pretty costly. So that's something that needs to be overcome. Compounding the problem is that at many FIs, staff don't actually have to bank with their employer. So imagine it from a staff perspective, if you don't bank with your employer, then obviously you don't use the technology. And if you don't use the technology, you're certainly not going to have the knowledge and confidence you need to promote and support it when it's in market. You can imagine a frontline staff there's no way that you would promote a technology you don't know how to use, because if a customer asks you a question, you're not going to look too clever. So it creates this sort of aversion to recommending if they don't understand how to use the tech. Compounding that problem is that very few FIs have good support tools for their digital banking products. And the ones that do are often pretty antiquated. And so really, ultimately, what they lack is the ability for staff and for customers to test drive the tech in a risk-free environment. And I think that's really the biggest challenge is giving the comfort level to those folks to try the technology. So those are the challenges that we see. I was going to run a quick poll, and I want to make sure that I don't do this improperly, because Carly gets mad at me when I mess up the polls. You'll see that unfortunately it changes my screen to a version of the Digital Academy. I didn't do that to market. I did that because it's a Zoom feature. Hopefully you can see my poll. And the question is, how fluent is your frontline staff in your digital banking products? So you can see it's not fluent. They know about it, but aren't great at using it. Staff has some experience, or their fluency is excellent. So we're just curious to know sort of where you're at with digital fluency. I'll give you a couple seconds for people to answer. Yeah, so we're seeing, this is pretty common that, roughly half the people or more know about it, but aren't great at using it. So I'll share the results here. So it's kind of a 50-50. There's sort of the beginning of fluency, but it's not quite there yet. So thank you for responding to the poll. We appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to jump back over to the presentation here. So I went and did some research into what other FIs are doing. So here's an example of an FI's webpage. Now I've redacted their name because I'm not trying to bash anybody, but you can see this is kind of text-based instruction on how to use their financial technology, their digital banking. Well, from a user's perspective, it's pretty hard to translate text into the actual graphical user interface experience. It tells you what to do, but when you look at the screen, it's hard for your brain to sort of do that math and the conversion. So this isn't really ultimately the best experience. It doesn't even have screenshots to help you understand it. I think the more important thing, though, is this doesn't send a great message to the customer on how seriously the bank is taking digital. If this is the best effort the bank's going to make to support digital, as a customer, I wouldn't feel super confident in the digital capabilities. Another one we see is these kind of, they're like PDF manuals. Reminds me of the VCR manual that my parents, when my parents bought us a VCR in the 80s. And even though the reward for reading that manual was we got to watch a movie, none of us read it. We just played around with the hardware and tried to figure out how to watch a movie and how to record and all that kind of business. So you can see this is page 67. We're only about halfway through. I think there's a big aversion for people investing that much time and trying to learn the technology. People would rather just pick it up and try. But the reason they don't is they're intimidated and they don't want to make mistakes. So the next one we see is videos. Videos are awesome, but I think they're better suited for promoting your technology and for highlighting the ease and convenience. Using it to teach people how to use the technology is, it's good in the sense that, we're all accustomed to going to YouTube to learn how to do stuff. The problem is videos are a little bit expensive and a little bit long to produce. And then when your tech changes, you got to change all your videos. So your support will always be behind the evolution of your technology because you can't produce it fast enough. So while videos are the preferred solution of these three, they're still not the best solution for actually teaching people to use your tech. So I wanted to run one more quick poll here. Again, it does that thing where it sends over. I'll just launch this poll. So I'm wondering what tools your FI is using to help staff or members migrate to digital. So our options: none, web pages, videos, PDFs, interactive walkthroughs. I'm curious as to what you guys are doing. So we got some that are none, one that's videos. I'll just give it one more sec. Okay, and end the poll and share out the results. So couple you none, one that's using videos, so fairly typical, but nobody's using the VCR manual. Not a bad idea in my opinion. So thank you for that. I appreciate the feedback. Okay, let me jump back over to the presentation. So let's talk about digital adoption platform. It's basically a repository of walkthroughs and simulators that allows people to test your tech in a non-live environment. It's branded, it's searchable, WCAG compliant. But what its real goal is to improve the employee experience so that they understand the tech and become fluent, which ultimately creates a better customer experience. And so that's what it's being used for. But why is it important? Well, the first thing is having a central repository where all of your tutorials or walkthroughs exist drives organizational alignment. So no matter what channel a customer comes to your bank through, that frontline staff member goes to this one repository so that the message is consistent and the support is consistent across all channels. I think that's important for creating a good customer experience. The other thing is it provides a risk-free environment for both staff and customers or members to test drive your tech, which ultimately shows the ease and convenience of your technology. So I'll take 2 seconds so you can visualize what I'm talking about before I get into the 8 use cases. Here's TD's bank's version of a digital academy. And so for a customer who's having trouble enrolling in online banking, it's as simple as going to select the walkthrough, and it'll walk me through the steps with guiding text on the stuff I need to do to get through the transaction. When you're done, you can play it again. You can go visit the App Store to download the app if you hadn't, and then it recommends other walkthroughs that are similar. So that's kind of from the customer experience. And from the employee experience, imagine your frontline staff, somebody says, I'm having trouble enrolling in online banking, you grab a simulator, then you can ask them, where are you having trouble? Oh, I'm having trouble with security setup. You can go right to the screen and then walk them through the remainder of the transaction, ultimately shortening talk time and improving the customer experience. So that's kind of the Digital Academy. I just wanted to show that to you so that you have something in your mind as I talk about how it's being used. So the first thing that we didn't anticipate is our customers are using it in branch. So some of them will have a concierge. So when you have folks in at branch and they're in line waiting to do a transaction, someone will come up to them with a tablet and say, what are you here to do today? And they'll say, I'm here to pay a bill. Let me show you how easy that would have been using our tech. So branch staff can be these technology ambassadors, but if they aren't fluent on the tech, they're certainly not going to recommend it. They're because they know they can't support it. So that's how it's being used by some of our FIs. Contact center, if you think about it from their perspective, through the pandemic, many of them have been sent home and they're working from home. So they lack that shoulder to shoulder colleague support that they enjoyed at the office. And then if they don't have sort of support tools to support the digital, makes it even trickier. So the contact centers are using it as a quick reference tool within the flow of work. When a customer has a challenge or has a question, they can pull up a walkthrough and reduce that talk time, de-stress the situation, and ultimately improve the employee experience because it's not as stressful, and the customer experience because they get through their issue faster. The next thing we see is interactive voice response system. So when someone calls in, they're sitting on hold, and the robot asks them questions, and then we can solve the problem with a walkthrough. It'll text them a link to it, and what that does is reduce connects. It also offers faster issue resolution for the customer, ultimately improving the customer experience, and then saving money because each connects through that contact center costs money. Similarly, it's being nested into chatbots, which we hadn't envisioned, but makes a lot of sense. So, if somebody enters the chat, has a question that can be solved by a walkthrough, it recommends it to them and ultimately resolves their issue even faster. Then the website, which is what we originally envisioned it for. Our thinking was a lot of younger folks don't actually want to talk to people. They prefer to self-help. And they certainly don't want to call the contact center and be on hold. And they expect rapid support available all the time at their fingertips. So the Digital Academy we had thought would be a tool that could link off the website that allows them to self-help without having to deal with people. And it's being used that way. It's just, that's only one of the 8 ways. The next piece is marketing. So a lot of marketing, FI marketing programs talking about their digital often stop at awareness. As an email that talks about how easy the technology is, or it's a TV ad in some cases with national banks, talking about, and she always talking about the value propositions. But the walkthroughs let people experience the tech. So if you send that email, rather than just a static email, it can say, take it for a test drive. And what that does is provide that risk-free environment and reduces the new tech anxiety, builds comfort so that people have familiarity and are willing to say, it's easy. I can try that tech. I'm not worried about making a mistake. The next one is a couple customers using it as part of the new customer acquisition process. Because for a lot of customers or prospective customers, choosing an FI is also choosing a fintech to establish a relationship with over the long term. And people want to try before they buy. And I think what they're feeling is that having the ability to go and test drive it shows a commitment to the customer experience and shows the digital tools that you're going to be using over the long term. So new customer acquisition is kind of an exciting thing that we're starting to see that we hadn't envisioned. And then frontline staff training. As I mentioned, Lemonade is a learning experience platform. So often the walkthroughs are used as modules within a learning path to help drive digital fluency amongst frontline staff, which is part of the original way we'd assume they'd be used. So those are the 8 ways, and what we're seeing is customers who are really using it in all these ways we hadn't envisioned. And ultimately, what we've realized is they're using it as a sort of digital adoption support formula. And that is that if we can improve the employee experience so that they understand the tech and they're fluent on it, as long as our digital product experience is good, the actual tech, a good employee experience plus a good digital experience equals a great customer experience. And that's what we're seeing our customers use it for. So that's the 8 ways that customers are using technology walkthroughs to drive adoption and fluency. Before we go, I wonder if you could do me one quick favor and answer one more poll. I'm going to launch this, and I'm curious as to which of the 8 ways you think are sort of most interesting to you or most important, because we're always trying to see what FIs think and what their perspective is on how this stuff can be useful. So if you have a sec, I wouldn't mind if you could just indicate which one you see as being the most sort of important use for you. Frontline staff training, I see. Okay, I'll just give it one more sec because I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Okay, I'll share the poll here. So frontline staff training, the #1 answer, and marketing and driving awareness. So interesting that the prevailing feeling is that if frontline staff is the most important thing, and certainly that's the human element, so it makes a lot of sense. And I think it sort of ties into turning staff into digital ambassadors. So I'll stop sharing the poll and I'll go back and turn it over to any questions that you may have. And you can enter them into the chat, and we'll try to tackle every question that you've got.
Okay, we have one question here from Lawrence, and it's how long does it take to roll out one of these?
Oh, that's cool. Great question. So the authoring tool is super fast. When we first started building these, we were building them ground up for customers, the walkthroughs, and they would take 1 week to 2 weeks per walkthrough because they have to be WCAG compliant and go through compliance testing, so accessibility testing, I should say. Now you can build a walkthrough in less than 30 minutes. And the website, the hub itself is also authored in our tool. So literally, once we've defined a URL, you can be live the next day with some walkthroughs in market. So it's very, very fast, very nimble. It's a super easy implementation.
Okay, we have an anonymous question here. If I update my app, would I need to remake my walkthroughs from scratch?
No, you can edit them. So you can go into the authoring portal, select edit, and swap out any screens that have changed. That's one of the things we really wanted to make sure was that changes were easy and intuitive because we know the tech changes frequently.
This next question comes from Catherine. And the question is, how long does it take to build a demo?
Well, depends on the length of the demo, but literally you can do it in mere minutes. Like, if you were doing how to enroll in online banking, it's got a number of steps. That might take you 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But if you were doing how to log in, which only has 3 or 4 screens, literally less than 10 minutes.
Okay, this question comes from Amy. And the question is, do the walkthroughs have to be for mobile apps, or can they be for forms, or how to connect to Apple Wallet?
It can be anything you want. So we have customers using them for guides on how to fill out the PPP form or mortgage application. They can also be used for internal use for how to use your CRM. Any technology or even any paper form that you want to guide people through, as long as you can get a screenshot of it, you can create a walkthrough.
Okay, those are all the questions that I'm seeing. So I think, John, you're safe to sign off.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I threw up our email there in case you have any other inquiries. Feel free to hit us up if you want more information or if you want to chat about how walkthroughs could work for you guys. We're here. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.